4. Okay, I'll give it another. Actually, yeah, I think start letting people in. It's a drinks. Enjoy it.
I'll pour myself a glass of wine.
Ah, I've gone for wine.
Right, shall I start a meeting then?
Yeah, I think it's past. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
The bar is open. Cool. Good afternoon. I think we've got people joining now, so fasten your seatbelts. We'll just let a few people join in. I think people just joined. Hopefully you've got your wine, your chocolate, your coffee. I've got a selection. Do I go for the big one or the small one? And I know one of them is about 6.4%, and I know one of them is 4.9, and I'm kind of going to play a bit of Russian roulette with myself. I'm going to go for the tall one. I'm not going to look at the alcohol content. So anyone joining now, welcome. I think I've seen some older names, and good to have you on board. Just give another 30 seconds or so, and we'll dive in as well. I think a few people are still coming on board. So to those coming on board, if you've got your drink to hand, take a little mouthful of it now. I've got something brown. Oh,
Yeah, John, join you.
I think I've chosen the 6.5% one. So I think, yeah, I think we'll start. It's 4:32. Everyone has got a busy evening ahead of them as well. So all customers that are joining in, thank you, welcome. Hope you've got your glass of wine and beer to hand, or your tea, or your coffee, or your chocolates. So welcome to the. I think this is one of the first ones we've done virtually. We've done some dinners and lunches and all sorts of events in the past. We've got a whole set of webinars on our website, and please check them out. So this is the first time we've just done something about Bluesource. So thank you for taking the time. I will crack on. So this is the agenda. Actually, the agenda is, we'll call it the drinks flow. I'm going to do some intros first. For people on the not showing their camera, there's some people you'll see in front of you. Hopefully, because we've got mostly clients on today. Welcome to all of you clients. But you'll know some of these faces. If you don't, well, now you will. So on with me, I've got Louise Lewis, very top. Louise runs our compliance team. Karthik Padmanabhan, he runs our modern workplace, and he's going to cover off that. He's actually going to cover a bit about the futures as well, so worth hanging around till the end till then. And Viam Mercer, I think a lot of you will know Viam, is going to talk a bit about our cloud business, and also the security transformation side. James Harris over there, again, when all else fails, we call upon James and his team. So welcome, James. Introducing Martin. A lot of you probably won't know Martin, so we'll introduce Martin a bit later as well. So welcome, Martin. And also Simon Wardle, MD as well. So hopefully today is going to be a touch informal. Hopefully it's going to be informative. Questions, please. We're in teams, so chuck up your questions, raise your hand, and hopefully we'll take it from there. So what are we going to talk about today? Just a bit about Bluesource. I think it's important that you understand the health of our organization, what we're doing, what we're seeing. It's three worlds collide. It's we're putting a jumping there, but this is where that compliance, security, and that kind of transformation to the cloud comes together. Obviously, we'll talk a bit about cloud transformation, our modern workplace, and that secure, protect, and govern side of our business. Touch of where to start, but most of you are on that journey anyway, but sometimes it's about taking a bit of a breath of air, reevaluating where you are, and maybe we can help there as well, and a touch about the futures as well. So Simon, do you want to just take a 30 seconds or so, just a bit about Bluesource ourselves, to set the scene?
Yeah, thanks, John. A little bit of echo. Is that okay? Yeah. So firstly, thank you to everybody for coming along to the webinar this afternoon. And also thank you for your business over the last year or two. I'm hoping that you'll get a feeling for this, that we're a group of people that, one, work for our mortgages, but more importantly, we like to solve problems for people. And hopefully you'll get a feel for that as you meet the guys as they talk through the webinar. In terms of Bluesource, we remain a privately owned business with two main shareholders. We have a strong balance sheet and growing profit in both our UK and US subsidiaries. So we've seen growth in the last couple of years, and that's both top line and bottom line. Across all three of our practices, we've seen increased demand. So the biggest parts of increased have been around cloud transformation and security, cybersecurity, and they've been growing at the fastest rate, kind of mirroring the market to some extent. We remain City of London based, so we have an office in London Bridge, but we are running and will continue to run a hybrid working policy that actually has worked really well for us and our employees. We've actually done out of our completely rebuilt our office around collaboration, and of course, very happy for other people to use that. So if you need office space for a meeting or something, please let us know. I'm very happy to kind of lend it out. And like a lot of businesses in this market, we have a growing workforce through a whole lot of additional hiring. We're quite picky about the levels of experience that we seek in the market. Being City of London based, we used to really look for a London people who lived in the London area, commutable distance. That now allows us to go to the remote working, allows us to go to a wider audience, but we remain we look for high levels of experience in our employees. So in a market where demand is greater than supply, recruitment remains challenging, but I think it probably does for everyone. So I suspect everyone on this call has that challenge.
And so, Simon, Simon, just before you dive in, what are you then hearing from, you're speaking to clients, you're also speaking to the peers, you're speaking to kind of MD levels across the market we're in. What are you hearing from those people?
I think that for me there are let's say there are five things. The first one is the one I've just said, which is that this whole market is suffering from greater demand than supply of talent, and so even if you've got the budget, it's incredibly difficult to hire the staff. And so actually people are now looking at other ways of solving their problems other than just hiring. So that's the first one. I think the second one is a really interesting one, and it's around the increase in dominance. And maybe I need to be careful with my wording, but the dominance of Microsoft. I think this is partly through, better product development. So they now have products that are much better than they used to be in certain areas. And that's allowing them to bring together all those products and bring that data together to give new insights and new control. So Viva being an example, and actually Sentinel being an example. So I think the growth of Sentinel will be exponential, and we'll see some real changes around that. It helps really that kind of Microsoft growth helps with productivity and user experience, but actually the potential downsides are it's incredibly complex now to configure a Microsoft system, both for compliance and security. And we see more and more people needing our help to do that and manage it ongoing. And we also see rising costs in particularly in licensing. But if any of you have had a recent quote for unified support or CSP through the new NCE pricing, you'll know exactly what I mean. So that's the second one. I think the third one is around the increased threat and the compliance gap. So as we move from data centers to centers of data, as Gartner would put it, we inherited complexity, and actually we had to roll out quicker than probably we all planned to. And what got left behind in some cases was compliance. So it's not just about backing up data anymore, it's about remediating. And we see more and more people now signing up to incident response services on retainers, because actually everyone now recognizes the threat now is significantly bigger than it was even 2 years ago. And interestingly, everybody is now coming around to the idea that actually data governance is a key part of security rather than something on its own around compliance. And as a result, I think that security, compliance and IT role, or the roles within what was traditionally separate departments, actually is starting to merge, and well, not starting. I mean, it's merged already, and it's incredibly difficult now to bring all of the stakeholders together to get decisions made around IT changes. And actually, in many cases, there simply isn't time to wait and do all of that, because the threat is there and we need to move on. So stakeholder management, I think, has got increasingly difficult. I think lastly, there are some really exciting new technologies around that are disrupting. So I mean, I'll pick out a few, but and many of them have been around for a while, but they are now past that in the hype cycle. They're now into the mass market. The first of that being Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE, the Gartner definition of the new, if you like, the new corporate network approach. That gives you lots of things in a platform on the network, and it gives you a lot of flexibility around what access you give to certain people. And I think granular access management is increasingly important. We talk about ZTNA, but it's absolutely fundamental to how we share corporate resources going forwards, because people shouldn't have access to stuff if they don't need it, because it represents threat. Interestingly, lots of threat around authentication. Most threats start with some kind of phishing email and failed authentication. Looking increasingly at passwordless authentication being the way forward. So again, a lot of people moving on that, I think. We also see EDR. Many of you will have EDR already implemented, but we do still see a lot of our clients with legacy antivirus endpoint protection, but most are now moving to EDR. And as I said earlier, we see incident response services and cloud posture security management is key, because again, if you see a lot of the breaches in the press, it's where actually people they've neglected their cloud environment, they've misconfigured something, and they've left a massive hole in the wall. And then finally, the last area that we see is really exciting again is that cloud backup. So in the old days we would back up the data center. Now we're having to back up the centers of data. And that includes all of the Microsoft environments. So lots and lots of challenge around that. So hopefully it gives you an idea, John. Back to you.
It helps with I think where our clients are probably hearing the same. But as I said, anything we say today, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. I've seen some just as waiting in the lobby, so it's great to have those people who've just joined as well. So please, raise a glass to you guys as well who've just joined us. We've been going for 22 years. So we're everything you would expect of an organisation based in London, high quality, high value, consultant-led partnership there. But actually, I've seen some of the names that people just joined. Those 22 years have meant that we've been working with a lot of you through that time. So we've seen people as system engineers, system administrators, team leaders, heads of departments, CIOs, CEOs as well. So we've seen a growth of everything you've been doing, and as you've been developing and growing as customers that have been with us and left to other organizations and come back and come out and find out what we're doing at the moment, we've developed. And part of today is to show you where we're developing and what the market's doing and what we're seeing and where we're available to help there. And one of the biggest areas I'm seeing, and so I brought it down a level here, is that E3, E5 conversation. It is that, what's your Office 365 strategy? How are you going to deploy? What are you going to do? How are you going to do that? But then what's Microsoft are trying to sell you the E5 all the time. But what's the gaps with that? What can you do? Where's the value? What other technologies do you need, even if you have E5? So these are the areas and conversations on that cloud transformation journey that we can help bridge and gap. And part of that, I talked about those three worlds colliding, very much about that cloud transformation and modern workplace, but it's that governance side. And we've been doing governance for the past 20 years of that 22 years of experience. And we're partnered with Symantec 15 years ago, so we know the security side. And I just want to start, again, today's informal. Today is bringing in people who live and breathe it, that you customers, you will know. So Louise, I just want to start bringing in people now. Louise, hi. Louise, from a compliance perspective, I know you're working on a couple of large NHS projects at the moment. What is it that from a compliance perspective people are looking at with clouds and transformation sides?
Yeah, I've noticed the change. I mean, emails, everyone just picks up the emails and migrates them off if they're going up to the cloud. But then clients are finding that they're left with file servers with terabytes of data on. They don't know who owns this data, when it was last accessed, when it was last modified, or even what type of data they've got on the systems. You'll find a lot of clients, people store their holiday photos or their children's horse riding videos, and
Yeah.
there's lots and lots of rubbish sitting on the systems that if you migrate to the cloud, you've got to migrate it and pay for the migration to take it up there 9 times out of 10. And then you've got to pay for the storage of hosting it in the cloud. So it's been about being smart about your data. That's the biggest change. Looking at the data, scanning it, classifying it, seeing what you've got, deciding what to delete and what to migrate up to the cloud if that's where you're going. Because historically, everyone would just keep everything for 5-9 years. So
if only people could delete.
Yeah, and now people are getting brave. People are starting to delete. So there's a big change in the last few years that I've noticed. So yeah, we're doing a lot of data management.
Brilliant. Thank you, Louise. And I know I've mentioned Martin's recently joined us, and what was interesting was Martin's one of his reasons for joining. So Martin, welcome to the team. I think a lot of people on the call probably haven't yet met you. Hopefully that will change over the next coming weeks and months. But can you just let people know why you decided to join a consultancy like ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I suppose apart from a really strong UK customer base, which was it was key, but I think what Louise mentioned there, a key kind of strong history in data governance and compliance and data management, and I think the combination of that with the understanding and commitment of the strategy of security forming part of that strategy. I think that was a key. You don't get that many security partners that are that strong in both areas, and because, as Simon mentioned, they kind of becoming that the governance and security are kind of becoming one, really. So it's really vital to have that the strength in both areas. So obviously organizations need to know exactly what their critical data is, what their crown jewels are, and where they are and who has access to them, and for compliance and auditing reasons they need to report who has access. But from a security perspective, you also need to ensure that employees have just enough access to do their jobs, so which is an important layer in that IT security strategy. So that reduces the security risk from an insider threat, but also from external, so cyber attacks from external as well, because it's much more difficult to data exfiltrate or to move laterally when the access is restricted. But you're working from, I've been in IT security for about 16, 17 years, hence the grey hairs and the bags under my eyes. But I think my previous role in an IT security services partner, we were turning customers away because although we could provide security in on-premise environments and in cloud environments, we weren't able to help the customer in the journey through to cloud. So when customers were migrating to cloud or to Outlook 365, we weren't able to help, and we weren't able to help with getting the environment back up and running once they were hit by a ransomware attack. So, and BlueSource can help in both of those areas, which is key and really important for organizations. And I think lastly is the expertise in Microsoft. Not only from a security perspective, but services around Azure and 365 and all of the modern workplace products, the Teams, SharePoint, and then kind of moving into security, the MIP, Intune, Microsoft Defender, Microsoft Sentinel. So the expertise across the board in Microsoft was a key differentiator why we moved to BlueSource.
You should be in sales, Martin, as well. So thank you for that. Thank you. I know you're going to talk a bit more later on as well, just about some of the challenges we're seeing from our customers and the conversations you're having. So, look, we talked about a bit about where we've come from, what we're doing. These are the 3 areas. It's that cloud transformation, modern workplace, secure and govern. I'll just take a quick second now. As I said, if there's any questions, any queries, anything we're saying, or you want to challenge or kind of give some of your experiences From a customer's perspective, always delighted to hear that as well. And also, hopefully, you're enjoying your drinks, and hopefully they've actually landed as well. So thank you for that. So doing this for 22 years, we always just want to make sure that you understand what we can actually deliver, and it's that hard-earned experience and developing solutions and services for our clients. Bringing those trusted methodologies, to make sure projects run on time and to budget, but also leading with those technologies. We've talked about Microsoft. You're going to hear a lot about Microsoft, but we also understand, how other parts of that business can be brought in as well. So speaking of challenges, VM, I'm going to bring you into this part now with our cloud transformation business. We've got a client who's really proud of a project that you and your team delivered for them, a large global drinks manufacturer. Can you tell a bit about that as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. So we have seen over the last 12 to 18 months a bigger shift towards cloud infrastructure, moving cloud infrastructure into public cloud. And that's not necessarily full data centers. Sometimes it's part data centers. This particular engagement, they had a compelling event to exit 2 colo data centers, and it was a very tight timescale. So we had just a few months to get the data center shut down. So we started off with a migration assessment. So this is around cost modeling and looking at how we're going to take each workload and what we're going to do with it, whether we're going to move it to a SaaS-based service or an IaaS or a PaaS-based service. And we apply what's called R-lane theory, or the 6 R's of rationalization. I won't go into that right now, but feel free to give me a shout afterwards. We'll talk about it. So once we've made that decision about what we're going to do with those workloads, and that involves not just a technical assessment, but working with the application owners to understand, what's the roadmap and what do we need to do with it. We build that model of where it's going to go, how we're going to do it, and then that feeds into the execution plan. So then we embark on the actual data center migration. So we take all of the workloads and we applied those rules to it. So if it was going to SaaS, we migrated the data off to SaaS, configured that environment. For those services that were being rehosted, we would perform the replication and we migrated those over. And again, this involved working with not only the technical owners, but the business owners as well, so that they could test applications as we were switching them over to make sure that we're not impacting the business as much as possible. And then that kind of wraps up with the re-platformed exercises. So anything that we're not rehosting, we're not just lifting and shifting, we needed to build from scratch and migrate across. So this would be databases, applications, and a whole bunch of different services. Then of course there's always a big set of services and workloads that can just be retired. So we did find that there were a lot of services that we could turn off, and we didn't need to migrate them into the public cloud or the Azure environment. And then wrapped all of that up with actually shutting the data center down. So erasing all of the disks, so true erasure, not just deletion, and destruction of hardware and removal of hardware from the data center as well.
Cool.
And I'm glad to say we hit our deadlines.
Good. And I also know that again, the customers looking for the methodologies we've used, they're using it as their standout project for the year as well. And when you see the size of the organization, that's a fair compliment to you and the team as well. And I know Microsoft now involved, so we're turning this into a case study that they want to use as well. So great work, great challenge. Up on the screen is some of the services that support that. And I think a lot of people on the call probably have used our Exchange migration, SharePoint, or archive migrations as well. So just part of that business as well. So VM, I know we'll talk a bit later as well about on the security side as well. Thank you. So modern workplace, that part of our business, this doesn't need much of an introduction. You will know it. However, at this stage, Karthik, we still see how this is changing and morphing, and what Microsoft are doing around this area as well. Karthik, for those who, I think a lot of people on this call will have met Karthik, but Karthik comes with, not only his consulting skills, but also leading the rollout of M365 for large, and had all the compliance and security banners from a customer side as well. So you've sat on both sides of it as well, Karthik. So Karthik, welcome. Do you want to explain a bit about some of the challenges and some of the conversations you're having with clients and probably people on this call? Mute Karthik as well. So I should have had a bet who was going to be the first person coming on, and we had to have the mute button. So usually it's me. Thanks, Karthik.
No problem. Thank you so much. Yeah, so absolutely happy to talk about that. So as we've seen, I mean, so with modern workplaces, a lot of people know, we've spent a lot of time talking to clients about the new collaboration capabilities, the move to the cloud. Most organizations have gone to Teams just because they had to get something going very quickly when the pandemic hit and, the remote working kind of took off. But I think some of the lessons, some of the things that we've seen that are now coming to the forefront, we're 18 months into remote working and that kind of stuff, and we're getting to the stage where yes, a lot of organizations like us have decided to continue staying on a hybrid working pattern. Some businesses are opening their offices back up, but what's really come out is that it's not just a temporary change. This is going to be a permanent change, and we have to look at technologies to enable that permanent change as well. So some of the things, are some people are spending much longer hours working. The kind of separations that you had before with commuting and that kind of downtime that you got with commuting, that's kind of gone away. So we're seeing a lot of new paradigms coming into it. So some people are enabling kind of virtual commuting, so they get that kind of separation. When they're going into the office in the morning, they can prepare mentally, having this virtual commute time, and that kind of stuff. And similarly, when they shut off from work in the evenings, again, they can get that proper separation. But it's also about getting the correct work-life balance. People working longer hours and that kind of stuff. People taking fewer vacation days because obviously we can't travel to a lot of places like we could in the past. So there's a lot of things, and I think organizations are looking at solutions to help them with these challenges. So it's moved away from purely looking at technology, from just how do we enable business collaboration, how do we enable teams to work when we're remote working or hybrid working, to, well, what can we use? How can we use these technologies, all of these insights, all of this data that we've got to actually improve the work experience and to create new solutions, new opportunities for inclusivity of everyone, whether they're hybrid working, whether they're in the office, or whether they're in a remote location. So the technologies are coming on stream now. So things like new capabilities within Teams, for instance, to enable that, leveraging new ways, new channels within Yammer or Teams or the Microsoft 365 stack.
And Karthik as well, the bit, because we always, it's great rolling out the technologies, but we also get that the worries and the concerns, and with all that data, at least key communication and document data, isn't there possible that once you have all that enterprise search, especially you're now betting into the Microsoft world, you've all got that enterprise search capability, you might kind of share documents or have documents available for people who maybe shouldn't have them. How do you support manage that side of the compliance? It's that connection between availability to use the technology and actually how you kind of manage and control it. What are you seeing on that side?
Absolutely. So there's two aspects to that. So one is One is all of this analytics and stuff that happens in the background. So when you're using, Microsoft 365, you may not realize it, but everything that you do within 365 is tracked. So when you open a document, when you browse for stuff, when you search for things, all of that information is actually being tracked at the back end, right? So up till now, some of that information was surfaced through Delve and through other technologies within 365, but a lot of it was hidden. But with the advent of Microsoft Viva, for instance, where they're trying to promote this information not just to the employees, but also to the leaders within the organization, the employees, managers, and so on. All of this information gets surfaced, and then, as you said, there is a concern. Is that too much information? Is there oversharing? So I think Microsoft has tried to address this. When they first launched Viva, there was a lot of kind of uproar from the industry saying, and from individuals saying you can't be surfacing all this information. So what they've done is they've done a lot of work in trying to anonymize that information, aggregate that information, but still giving the managers and leaders within the business the insights that they need to actually help their workforce. So it's not seen as a way for them to monitor and to see where, how many hours somebody is spending on particular tasks and whatever. That's not the purpose. This is more about well-being and to ensure that your teams aren't burning out by just spending hours and hours working. So so the data is anonymized, it's aggregated, rather than telling you person A is spending how many hours on something. And then the other part of what you asked was down to permissions management and control and kind of visibility on your data. So yes, once you put content onto 365, especially as we're seeing this transformation where people are moving from file shares and they're moving from other systems and putting their data up onto 365, the actual data access governance becomes a very important consideration in that. The old methodologies of kind of security through obscurity by hiding things within, your file share somewhere where that nobody's going to look. I mean, that doesn't work anymore because, as you said, somebody can just do a very generic search term and then come up with some sensitive information once you've moved it into 365 because the enterprise search engine is very, very good. But 365 is designed to security trim everything, so based on your level of permission. So data access governance is very, very important. You have to get into the correct hygiene and controls around making sure that only the people who should have access continue to have access. This is always a continual problem when people are moving about business and they kind of, especially for people who've been in an organization for a long time, they tend to inherit a lot of access, even though it's stuff that they've just inherited because they've moved around different roles, but their access never gets removed from roles that they've previously held. And that's a dangerous thing. So data access governance, very important when you're looking at moving to SaaS solutions, especially Microsoft 365.
Cool, thank you. I know, Karthik, you're going to finish up towards the end with a touch about the futures as well, because this is all linked to health and engagement, employee engagement as well. So I know it's interesting when we get to the metaverse or whatever version it is as well. So thank you for that. But also, this is also linked. I know we talk about licenses. For those of you that know the new the NCE for Microsoft. Once you're in the Microsoft world, prices are I'm not sure going to go down. There's some changes to the Microsoft, so I'm sure a lot of our clients will know and appreciate that. But that making sure you've got the right licenses for the right level of technologies you're using and consuming as well is going to be the future as well. So we're joining those. Deployment, support, and licensing is going to be more and more kind of key, and I think that's what we're seeing with the NCE side as well. So happy to talk to clients if that becomes a key part of it as well, and managing that as well.
Yeah, cool. So the license optimization is, as you said, is important. Now this is the first time. So in March, Microsoft is going to increase their prices across the board. It's the first time they've ever done it. So until now, they've never had a price increase. But this price increase is going to be quite substantial, and they're changing the way that the different tiers are licensed. So The uplift may not seem like a big amount when you first hear about it, but it's actually an uplift at each level, at each tier. So absolutely looking at license optimization is a very good thing to consider now.
Sure, you're correctly licensed. Cool. Karthik, I know we'll speak later as well, so thank you as well.
Thank you. Thanks.
Just for those joining as well, if okay, no comment about the technology. Sometimes the technologies is as exciting as it is, but if you've got any particular beers, I'm drinking a nice Siren beer fine ale, and it's typically this lovely actually. So if anyone's got any commentary about the beer or the wine or the coffee they have, we're also interested in that as well. Cool. So we talked about your cloud transformation journey. You're all on that, in that world potentially, or you're considering it. And modern workplace typically is further down the line, that Office 365, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online. But of course, it's about that, how do I call it, making sure it's secure and compliant. And we've got some services, but I just want to bring in some back in Louise. So Louise is a lot of our clients will know us from the archiving, email archiving, journaling side, classification side. So, with the move towards Microsoft and potentially Compliance Center, what are clients talking to you about? What are you seeing in that part of the world?
Yeah, it's generally different based on different sectors. So the finance companies, if they're journaling previously going to 365, then they find they do have to carry on journaling, have that copy, immutable copy of the data. Whereas Microsoft Compliance Center, if they're not a journaling client and they just want simple e-discovery, then that's a good fit for a lot of clients. For clients that want advanced e-discovery, and then generally what I've seen, a lot of clients, they carry on journaling outside of Microsoft, just so they can have a full end-to-end e-discovery. Another difference, a lot of clients, whilst they carry on journaling, they're also classifying that data. So when I talked about classifying the file data on the file servers earlier on, people are being smarter about their journal data as well. So if, say, at BlueSource, we get loads of monitoring at bluesource.com. So I've set that to exclude from our journal. So you can be smart about what you're journaling. Those out-of-office replies, do you want to journal? Is the decision. Some clients, we've got for personal emails, they tag personal, and we classify that and keep that data for 1 year, whereas business data that's going through the journal system, we keep for 7 years. So people have been a lot smarter about how they work nowadays.
Cool, thank you. And Martin, with you mentioned some of the challenges when we spoke earlier, though. You've come in, you've spoken to a smaller subset of our clients. Hopefully, you can speak to some more over the coming days and weeks. What is it you're hearing from the clients, their challenges as well? What are you seeing and hearing?
Yeah, so I mean, cybersecurity breaches are increasing continually. So I mean, the Gartner the ransomware attacks increased 150% last year, and that's not slowing down. So it's still a major issue. Gartner have said, and it's no surprise, boards have identified cybersecurity risk as one of the highest source of risks for the enterprise. And what we've seen, or what they've stated, is 1 in 10 organizations are now creating cybersecurity specific committees at board level, which is that's kind of a new shift. And I spoke to an organization yesterday, and that the person was employed specifically to reduce the attack surface and looking at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and to ensure that their security posture aligns to that framework. So that's quite a shift. But it's no surprise that cyber attacks are continually increasing. I mean, the ransomware, your ransoms are paid, and the companies that are creating these ransomware cyber attacks, they know it's working, so they're just continually going to keep doing what they're doing, and unfortunately, it's going to be a case of when organizations are going to be breached, not if. So it's organizations have to have a plan in place to ensure that that they have that proactive support. So ensure that the endpoints are protected, They have a secure email gateway, especially with these ransomware attacks. 90% of those ransomware attacks come in through a phishing email. So the first thing that organizations need to do is to have a secure email gateway to try and limit those attacks coming in via email. But you also need to bring up the awareness of the end users. So you can create simulated phishing attacks to the end users, and hopefully most people in this on this webinar have received simulated attacks from their organization. But if not, it's something worthwhile, because it's not trying to catch people out, it's trying to improve the behavior of the end users, so that they can ideally report malicious emails which they see, and can almost have like a sense. All the users can be a line of defense within an organization. So that's always important. And Gartner also mentioned a cybersecurity mesh architecture has evolved. I mean, that's no surprise. It's very difficult to have one security vendor in the organization. So in order to be able to secure the endpoints and the digital citizens, which Gartner state now, it's not users, they call it citizens, which basically the employees and the partners and contractors and anybody, any of the users they consider as the digital citizens, but also the IT assets, and they can be located everywhere, as you know. So they need to follow the same cybersecurity controls and policies as all of the employees. So and these cybersecurity technologies need to be integrated as much as possible. The more cybersecurity vendors that you have, it becomes more difficult to be able to integrate with all of those and provide automation and orchestration capabilities, which are coming into the marketplace more and more. So that's key. That's a key challenge that Gartner's identified. And the third and last one is the loss of visibility and control. So according to Gartner, so more than 50% of organizations will unknowingly or mistakenly have some data or network or application which is directly exposed to the internet. So this is what Simon mentioned at the beginning, is why organizations are moving to SASE type solutions. That's why they're more demanded. So it's key to protect those managed and unmanaged SaaS applications, and that the policies are applied across both those in-house apps and SaaS applications as well. So there's lots of kind of key challenges in an organization, but one, obviously we've been speaking to lots of customers about how we can help, and the key area is to understand the current security risk, so understand the current security posture. So if you can then identify where you currently are in that journey, what are your main risks, so that we can then plan to address those main priority risks and look to kind of cover those over the next 12 months, and that will therefore reduce your attack surface. So looking at your current security risk posture is key as well.
Oh, we may have a slide later on for that one. Yeah, but we are speaking because it's that performance and that security, and that making sure people can use the technology as well. The productivity side. So sometimes I think people think with performance and productivity, I've got to give up a bit of security, and I don't think that's the case now. I don't think there's technologies out there that you can actually have that can make you still performant, and you're giving up nothing on security. You're not giving anything on productivity as well. So yeah, it's that joining together. So cool. Okay, thank you, Martin. Listen, best of luck. And I'm sure you'll be speaking to clients constantly as we progress. So thank you, thank you, Martin. And VM, challenges. We've heard a lot today. Where do you, and listen, and most of our clients on this call are, take this seriously. They're ahead of the curve, I would imagine. But if you were to say to someone asking you, where do you start? What does that look like?
So really it's a case of identify your biggest vulnerability and then fix it, close that loophole or whatever it may be. So fix that vulnerability and then just loop back round and repeat. So if you keep fixing your biggest vulnerability, eventually, hopefully, you'll catch up and you'll be as secure as you can be. So that's the high level. But really, what we find is that it's all about rapid action. So if you do spot a vulnerability, instead of discussing how that's going to impact the business, and I know that's easy to say, difficult to implement, but try and close it off as quickly as possible. And then if it is something that needs to be reintroduced, then we can have discussions around how to introduce it in a secure and compliant way. So sometimes too much time is spent with that vulnerability still active, and all the time something is vulnerable, the business is at risk, or the data is at risk, or the identities are at risk. And really, it's more about the people, not only about the technology, it's more about how the people use the technology. So as much as we're all talking about Office 365, Microsoft 365, and all of the Netscopes and CrowdStrikes and all of this technology can help you build a secure environment, which can then protect the business, but it's not a silver bullet. So we can't just buy a load of technology, install it, and think that's it, job's done. There's going to be lots of alerts coming in. Even if you go with a single vendor, there'll be probably thousands of alerts coming in each day, and this can lead to alert fatigue if no one's really looking at those alerts, or they don't understand how it's going to impact the business and the users and the data, and they're not acting on them. Then really, what's the point of putting that technology in the first place? So where we start is, to Martin's point, is we typically start with current state assessments. So we'll do a current state security posture assessment of the environment, just to make sure that you've got good configurations, you're maximizing your capabilities based on the licensing that you've got, and then help to remediate to increase your security posture, and then monitor that environment, and then loop back round and continually improve around that. And remember that with these cloud SaaS services, they're evergreen, so there's new features coming out all the time, and of course there's new vulnerabilities being found all the time. So once a vulnerability is found, then it kind of the race is on to get that closed down, and not only from the vendor side but also from the business side as well. So I'll give you a quick example. We're working with a client recently to do a security posture assessment for Office 365. They were using the E3 SKU, and so we did a first pass. We base ours around NCSC guidelines and some of the CIS benchmarks. So our consultant went in to do the audit and provide some recommendations back. And we found that without actually buying any more licenses, so just implementing and reconfiguring the controls that they already had paid for, they could increase their secure score by around 45%. So no real additional cost to significantly enhance the security posture of that platform. And then, of course, by uplifting the licensing, they could achieve further security enhancements. But really, I guess what I'm saying is the human factor is important. It's not just about the technology.
Cool. And so you just mentioned about having just E3 and getting the maximum amount of that investment, but a lot of our clients probably have been sold E5. Isn't that enough? I kind of just let's roll out E5 and I'm secure and safe. What do we say to that kind of comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we all know the marketing engine, the Microsoft marketing engine is very good at what it does. And so I'm not doing them a disservice. The Microsoft suite of security services is jam-packed, full of features, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. Is it enough? Well, it really depends on the business, the types of data that you have, the regulations that you need to adhere to, where your data is stored, and of course your exact security compliance requirements. So I'll kind of go back to what I said earlier, that the technology can help you deliver a secure and compliant service, and it will help you enable users to be productive, but it does need to be well implemented. It also needs to be well governed and continually monitored and improved. So there is that human factor to consider. We can't just rely on the AI and the machine learning at the back end as that silver bullet. It's not that. So if we kind of get into it and think about how we need to protect the business, how it's changed, it's not really enough to just protect the perimeter anymore with firewalls. That's kind of how we used to do it. Now we're really moving to protecting the identities, the devices, and the data. And so this is getting into that SASE or Secure Access Service Edge environment. And so it's typically described as a combination of network security functions. So things like secure web gateway, CASB, firewall as a service, and zero trust network access. And then you combine all of that with some of the WAN capabilities that you get through SD-WAN, and that builds your SASE environment. And it's really primarily as a service when we're talking about SASE, and it's generally based on identities and the real-time context of security and compliance policies. If we kind of unpack that a little bit, really what I'm saying, it's based around zero trust across everything and ensuring that we've got a good security posture that enables us to move out of a data center centric model over to an identity and device centric model. So going back to that question though, is Microsoft enough? Well, through our discussions with our clients, we really see two trains of thought. We've got clients who are fully in with Microsoft and or they want a single vendor. And the pros of that is it's well integrated usually. Hopefully there's fewer portals to jump into. Not always the case, but usually there's fewer things to look at. And you can buy everything from one vendor, so you've got one bill at the end of the month. On the downside, really, it is one vendor. So if that one vendor gets compromised, then you're going to get compromised across the board, typically. And then we've got the clients who like to go down the multi-vendor approach. So it's defense in depth, and you could potentially have overlapping product sets. But that's a good thing because it can provide fallback. So if a vulnerability gets through one, it could be caught up by the other one. I guess on the downside, typically is going to cost a little bit more to go with multiple vendors. And of course, you would usually have multiple places to configure, multiple places to go and look at the alerts that are coming in, although there's some solutions around that as well. So most people would have heard of layered security. Both of those models do deliver layered security. So it just depends on whether you prefer single vendor or multi-vendor. If I give you a quick example, we're working with a financial services client. They'd gone all in on Microsoft 365 E5, so they had access to everything, but they really needed to demonstrate best of breed and defense in depth security to their investors around secure web gateway, CASB, and DLP for non-Microsoft apps. So we went in and proposed a multi-vendor approach, and that used Netscope. So Netscope delivered the secure web gateway, the CASB, the cloud DLP, and the zero trust network access. And then still we used the Microsoft antivirus engine around Defender, Defender for Endpoint around EDR, and still some Microsoft for DLP. And the reason they went down that route is Netscope really did deliver them anywhere, anytime, any device approach. So it's really flexible in the SWG area, secure web gateway, really flexible in the zero trust network access, so they could get rid of all of their client VPNs, and delivered huge benefits in both of those areas where Microsoft was only about 80% of what they needed. So in this case, the risk was really too great to not go down the multi-vendor approach. They accepted the additional cost. Then on the flip side, we're working another customer who were again all in on Microsoft, but their main goal was to consolidate vendors. So they had gone in all in with Microsoft. They looked down the requirements list and decided actually the features that Microsoft provides good enough for us, and they didn't want anything outside of that. And so for them, the single vendor and the cost efficiencies were more important to them. So it's not really a one size fits all. Each business is going to be different, and it might be about picking different bits for different environments.
Thanks,
we
James.
have a story for both. So if it's a single vendor, we typically go Microsoft. So you've got your Defender EDR solution, and endpoint security, Defender for identity for your behavioral analytics, and Defender for Microsoft 365 to do all of your email security and cloud app-based security, and not forgetting Defender for Cloud Apps, which does your CASB. And then the multi-vendor approach uses CrowdStrike, Next-Gen AV, and EDR, which really changes the game on antivirus. So we can forget about definition updates. It's all based around process behavior. It's a very lightweight sensor, easy to manage. Mimecast email security, and then Netscope, the SASE for model from Netscope. And the benefit of that trio is that they share threat intelligence. So if we identify a threat in one platform, we can push that intelligence into the other platforms, meaning that we don't have to go and manually tell the system there's a threat, we need to close it.
Cool.
So no matter which way you go, there is a good story there.
And I think it's that, you know, customer interaction, making sure we understand, you know, from working within, you know, the infrastructure and operations team, working security and compliance teams. As I said, it's bringing those worlds together as well. Thanks for a very, very detailed answer to a question I thought was a bit simple. There you go. But listen, you've done all that. You've secured your perimeter. You've educated your staff on what to do, and I'm about to say, brown stuff still happens. You know, it can still go wrong, and when it goes wrong and you need that data recovery, James, this is when we wheel in James and his team as well. So James, I'm conscious of time. We need to hopefully people are finding it interesting at this stage, but James, so we've wheeled in, but of all the markets we've seen and we're involved in at the moment, the disruption in the backup market, the recovery market, probably is as big as it's ever been. You know, what's your where do you see that market going and ending up?
So thanks, John. So it's certainly disrupted. It's as disrupted as I think we've ever seen. To be honest, I think probably for the last 20 years, 25 years, I think when Veritas came into the market, and maybe to a lesser extent when Commvault came in, we saw quite a lot of change from the sort of the networkers and the things from that time. What's driven this change, with all of the things that we've talked about across the teams and the technologies and the great structures and infrastructures that can be put together, stuff goes wrong. There are malicious people out there, as Martin said, looking to monetize the risk and threat, both from a I guess a pandemic situation as much as anything else, but it's gone through the roof. I think people are seeing their threat position, their DR scenario, you know, from a Twin Towers to a 7.7. It's a completely different world now. As was said earlier, the threat is obvious. Peers within sectors are getting hit. It's a real and current problem, and we're seeing that from our side, and obviously we speak to customers all the time around these sorts of points. And realistically, what does that mean? Well, that all points to a what-if strategy, a plan B, and that really does come down to intelligent recovery systems, because when all else has failed, you're going to go to what you hope is a good copy of data to be able to recover from. And what we're definitely seeing in our space is a realization that quite a significant part of the backup market, and which is a high level of wallet spend, you know, in any IT budget, that's been built on relatively traditional Windows architectures with file systems sitting behind it that are are relatively compromisable. Even with deep access protocols, it's possible to unlock those. We've also got the threat from the inside, from the malicious employee, cycling retention clocks, doing all kinds of devious things around that. And basically, people are worried, and boards are worried. And as Martin said, it's right up there as far as top risks and concerns to the board and C-suite. So what that's doing is presenting a series of questions on backup that have realistically never been presented before, where people are really checking out whether they can secure and guarantee a good copy of data. And that's then bringing through a whole modernization play. You'll hear words like immutability cast far and wide. And that's immutability at the metadata level. That's immutability at the data location level. DR and how fast we can recover, and how can we detect ransomware? If you think about what backup is, it's a separate copy of data that you take pretty much every day. By incrementals, you're taking it every day. And we get pulled into those situations where things have gone very wrong. We had a recent one, which was one of the big four financial fines, actually, last year. We were brought in to try and resolve that problem for that customer, and these guys took a $30-40 million fine as a result of it, and fairly serious reputational harm. It took us 2 weeks to get them back, and that was really down to the fact that their underlying backup infrastructures were able to be penetrated, and this was a targeted attack. This was a socially engineered attack on the network for some days, and these guys did a lot of damage. But actually, if you can be in a position to either via service providers like us, or certainly by operators, and we're one of the larger, as you know, John, one of the larger backup operators in Europe, we see and have all of the best case and best practice examples to be able to give to clients when they want to design out their solutions. So multiple data points. Office 365, shared accountability. We know, there's a need to protect that from a third-party perspective. You've got data points, you've got divestment of data centers. So the data points are moving, they're widening. SaaS, Salesforce, SharePoint, all of these things are all playing into what's creating a really disrupted space for us. And certainly what we're doing from a I guess a next steps perspective is trying to workshop these more outside of the vendor. We find no disrespect to vendors, but they are there to simplify and tell everyone how easy it is to do this stuff. Life is complex. Backups fail. Bad things happen, and it's a complex world. And even with the best will in the world, you can simplify the tool, but the tool doesn't equal backups. It's how it integrates, it's how it works, it's how it talks to networks, SQL, etc. So that's the mix, really, and I think that's what we spend our time doing. And as a result, from a BlueSource perspective, we're looking to run in alliance with the workshops that we already do, these data management workshops, to really sort of surface some of these issues and challenges that people have. So long answer, sorry, John.
No, but it was good. I'm also conscious. I don't want to end on a talking about how things can go wrong and how we can cover. So James, thank you. But it's the realism of it. But I'm also conscious I'm eating into people's evenings now as well. So I'm gonna quickly jump. Bear with me, everybody. Where you're going to start. We mentioned that we run these and we've got some reports we can send over to give you a feel for what the outcomes of these are as well. So please touch base with that. I'm going to share. We're just going to finish up. I'm going to share a video. Is that what you say? A YouTube. I'm going to share that and just spend a minute afterwards as well. So hang in there. I'm eating into your evening, but hopefully the drink is So, Karthik, apart from not needing pants in the metaverse, and again, there was an article in the Times today. If anyone has got access to that, it was about gamification and how businesses are really looking at that from a enablement and health side. Just high level, is it hype?
I mean, it's not hype, but it's not also, something that's going to hit us tomorrow. But it's definitely something to think about. This is kind of, if you think back to the early 90s, it's what the internet was, right? So the internet was just becoming kind of mainstream, popular, and a lot of organizations, corporates were thinking, yeah, should we buy a domain? What does it mean? What do we need to do? What is a website? How is it going to help us? That's the kind of things that you should start thinking about when we're talking about the metaverse. These organizations, so it's driven at the moment primarily by Meta, formerly Facebook. They've changed their name to Meta to reflect the fact that their bet is the metaverse. That's what they're betting everything on. They are spending hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, basically, Facebook has put half its company, so 35,000 people working on building Horizon, which is the name of Facebook's metaverse. Microsoft is investing billions in Microsoft's version of the metaverse, which is Microsoft Mesh. They just bought Blizzard for $69 billion last week. And why are they buying Blizzard? It's not for Xbox, it's for the metaverse. That's the content creation engine that's going to power what they're hoping is going to be the future of the internet, basically.
I think there's a lot to talk about in this world, but I'm conscious of time as well. So unfortunately, and again, thank you for everybody for taking some time out with us today. And as you can see, when you get into conversations, they run a bit longer than we've planned. So hopefully we're 8 minutes over. But Karthik, this is something that's going to be for the next 2 years, 10 years, 12 years. We've been around for 22 years, so who knows what the next generation of Blue Source people will be talking about at that level as well. Maybe we're still here. Maybe the pensions go wrong and we're still around.
Well, this image that you're showing, I think, is a great illustration. This image is not hype. This is real. So this is live. This is actually a shot from how Accenture is starting to use Mesh for Teams, which is just launched in preview for Accenture, and they've actually distributed. Accenture is around 60,000 employees. They've distributed over 60,000 HoloLens goggles to all their employees, so they can start working and experiencing in the metaverse.
Cool. Okay. And I could be 6'4" in the metaverse as well, couldn't I? I'm just trying to look for the good stuff here. I don't need to wear pants, and I can be 6'4". Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Karthik. Appreciate that. Thank you for everybody that's attended. Hopefully you've enjoyed the drinks. Hopefully there's been some enlightenment on what Blue Source are, how we're developing, as everyone on this call is developing on their career paths as well. So thank you for attending. Simon, is there anything just to summarize that you just to catch at the end?
I think what I would like to summarize is the fact that this is an incredibly complex, even in 1 hour, we've covered just a massive area, and it kind of illustrates how this is an incredibly exciting time to be in this market, but it's also an incredibly stressful time for many people to be in this market. And that's why we come to work. We come to work to help people solve problems. So if we can be of help to you in some of these journeys, even if some of these journeys take us into the metaverse, then please let us know. Please involve us in writing your business cases to justify your budgets, and hopefully we can all progress well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Ben, we see there's a couple of questions there as well. We'll be back to you shortly as well, so we won't dive into it now. But guys, have a great evening. Thank you so much for attending, and enjoy the beers and enjoy your evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Cheers.
Good rubbing.